Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Finding You podcast. I'm Dr. Brad Reedy. Today is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. Tonight's broadcast is something I'm calling Conscious Parenting, a teaser. We have a Conscious Parenting workshop. We just finished a live one in the Bay Area this last weekend, which left me fresh with ideas. And also, we're having one coming up next week on the 19th. So if you're interested in that, you can contact our email at info@findingyouprograms.com to sign up for that. So before I get into tonight's teaser, let me just go over what we have coming up May 16th through 18th as an online Finding You workshop. Our next available workshop after that will be June 4th through 8th. I will be running that one. We have, I think, a spot left in that one. Like I said, the Conscious Parenting Workshop is coming up on May 19th, 9 to 4. And then we have the Finding Connection Workshop for couples. That'll be facilitated, hosted by me and my wife, Michelle, June 18th through 22nd. We also have coaching. If you're looking for a therapist or a coach, you can contact Finding You. We have coaches that can work with you all over virtually. If you want a private intensive, a couples intensive, a family intensive, anything Finding You, any suggestions, any questions for the podcast, you can always reach out to us and find us via our email address at info@findingyouprograms.com. Also, I'll be hosting a 5-day workshop at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. If you're interested, that's October 12th through 17th. It's really inexpensive for a 5-day workshop. It's only $500, approximately $500. If you'd like to learn more, sign up. Go to eomega.org and look for the Audacity to Be You workshop that I'll be hosting. Coming soon, we'll be solidifying this by the end of this month. We'll have the Finding You Inner Circle. That means that we'll have extra episodes that'll only be available for the Finding You Inner Circle. And if you are interested in being a live participant in our weekly broadcasts, that will be included. Anybody who's a Finding You client or alumni will automatically be enrolled. So if you've joined us since the fall of 2024, you'll be automatically enrolled. And again, info@findingyouprograms.com is the place to go. I just want to talk tonight really simply and casually about how I've evolved over the years in my parenting education. This year will mark my 18th year, almost 20 years of doing these broadcasts, sometimes twice a week. I have, of course, reduced it to once or twice a week, depending upon the month lately. Early on, my episodes, I was focused on skills. I would focus on tools. Often I would present on a diagnosis. Very often I would talk about various therapy approaches, which I still at times will do. But after answering the questions year after year, after thinking about things year after year, what happens for somebody is you realize that no specific approach technique really does the job. I think about the fact that any tool is only as good as its intention. Any tool is only as good as the motivation of the person using it. A hammer can be something that can be destructive, or it can be something that can help you build something. And so the tool itself holds no intrinsic value. And so while at times I value tools, and I'm going to be talking about a couple of new ones this evening, really I'm talking about a shift in thinking, a shift in approach. I often begin the Conscious Parenting Workshop by explaining my own approach to writing The Journey of the Heroic Parent. When we came up with the title, the idea was presented to us that really parenting is something that you go on this journey and you eventually become changed yourself, that the heroic parent wasn't a perfect parent or a good parent, but somebody who was willing to look at themselves, somebody who was really willing to do their own work in this process. And so the reason for my evolution is because it's difficult for me to answer questions about skills, about communication tools, about specific approaches, because if the context changes just slightly, ever so slightly, and each context is so uniquely different, the skill can lose its relevance. And so really, I want to teach parents, or at least I think more than teach them, I want to invite them into a process. I can't say stronger than this, that if my best tool, the thing that I know that has made the biggest difference in my life and in the people that I've been in close contact with, both professionally and personally, is doing your own work, your own family of origin, your own trauma healing and recovery. And the reason that that's so important is because I'm going to say this clearly tonight. I don't know that I've said it enough. If you want to know what your child needs from you, your child needs Your regulated nervous system. Your regulated nervous system is the most important thing that you can offer to your child. It becomes, in essence, it becomes the start of their sense of self, the base or the foundation for who they are and who they become. Children, Homo sapien, human children, really learn about themselves by the way that we interact with them. Not so much what we say to them, not what we teach them. I had parents at my most recent conscious parenting workshop, as we were going over various skills and ideas, asking the question about, can we teach our children this? And the point of it was, my answer was, it doesn't matter what you say to them. Or at least that's not the important thing. The important thing is how you show up to them. And if you're still operating from an unhealed traumatic place, and to some extent we all are, this is not a binary of you're either healed or you're not, you're either doing your work or you're not. There's so much more gray, so much more color in between those two extremes. But the fact of the matter is that it really doesn't matter what you tell your children. It matters how you feel around them, how you feel about them. And if your nervous system is regulated, you're going to have access to your creativity. It's going to be really hard to think of examples with a regulated nervous system where you wouldn't respond in a helpful way. Conversely, if you respond or if you show up in a dysregulated way, it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how many tools you have. You can, as you know, you can weaponize tools. I said to the parents this last week that, you know, I spent so much time early on teaching feeling statement, communication skills. And that made sense. That was a good place to start. I think I feel bad now for parents or couples, individuals that join me at this stage of my process. I almost want them to go back and listen to my earliest broadcast, read my earliest writings, and kind of take this journey with me. But I realized after a while, and this is true, virtually nobody uses the I feel statement indefinitely. Nobody uses it. Children don't use it. Parents don't use it. Partners don't use it. I don't use it. My wife, my family, all the people in my family that are in psychotherapy, which is many of us are very committed to that process, we don't use the I feel statement. What we do is we understand the principles. We understand the idea that I'm responsible for my feeling. That the experiences that I've had that have shaped the beliefs that I have about life, about relationships, about emotions, that I see through that filter. I look through that lens all the time. And so when I interact with you, how you behave doesn't cause my feelings, but interacts with my history, with my belief system to create a feeling. Typically, as in the feeling statement that I teach or have taught, we start off with I feel. That's the first part of it. And we express an emotion. But we don't do that because that's what happens first. We do that to emphasize ownership. It's my feeling. I'm feeling it. So while I don't use the I feel statement, while virtually nobody that I know, no therapist that I know that teaches the I feel statement uses it casually or in their personal life. It's very, very rare. I've almost never seen it unless somebody's trying to make a point or demonstrate it. But we understand what it means. We understand, for example, what we're in control of and what we're not, what we hope for that we cannot control and what we hope for that we can control. We understand what it means to sit and deeply listen to somebody without judgment or without interpretation. So again, the I feel statement, and I wrote about this in The Journey of the Heroic Parent, I included it as a chapter in The Journey of the Heroic Parent, is that it can lead us to a deeper awareness of ourselves. It does really, folks, create a jumping off point to understand what's going on inside of you. That's the purpose of the I feel statement. So yes, we teach the skill. I'll talk about the skill. But in terms of implementing it and using it in real life in real time, it might be, again, an exercise. It might be something that people do while in treatment or shortly after treatment. And I don't want to burst people's bubbles, but I've never seen it get used for any length of time. In the most difficult moments or discussions in our family, we go back to kind of more casual, natural sounding language. But it has embedded in it the idea. So I've moved away from tools and skills and techniques to teaching people how to think about parenting, how to think about relationships, how to think about themselves. And the number one thing that you can do, the number one tool for helping a child, for helping an anxious child, a depressed child, a substance abusing child, a child that's refusing to go to school, whatever it is, a child with an eating disorder, with a spouse, in a relationship that's conflictual, the most valuable tool that you can bring is your regulated nervous system. And let me talk about a little bit about awareness for a moment. I've been thinking about this lately. I have a lot of awareness. I can stand to have more for sure. I continue to work for more conscious awareness, but I have a significant amount of awareness. I've been in psychotherapy for well over 26 years. I've been to 12 intensives myself as a participant. So I've been exposed to myself. But awareness at times can't overcome my body, right? I have a feeling in my body. And again, it's not an acute specific sensation in a specific part. It can be that at times, right? You can have soreness in your neck. You can have pain or butterflies in your chest or in your belly. You can have a sore and exhausted lower back. All of these can be at times traced back to an emotional experience that you've had. But I'm not talking about those kinds of feelings. I'm talking about this place where I operate from, right? My body. I feel a sense of dis-ease. I feel a sense of anxiety. I feel a sense of worry, of hopelessness. So I have this awareness, this conscious awareness, and then I have this body experience. You know, the idea, the great title of the book by Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. The body's taking its own score. It's keeping its own score. But what I can do now, what I've been thinking about lately, is I can separate out my awareness from my body feeling. I might have an interaction with a family member, with a client even, or with a stranger for that matter, that causes great distress in me. And I can have all of the conscious awareness about what that means, why I'm triggered, why they might be doing what they're doing. All of that I can have access to. But it won't immediately and completely take away the feeling in my body. Which brings me to the next skill, the next idea, which is I can be an observer of my feeling. I can take the observer's stance, the observer's mindset with my awareness. And I can look in my body and I can say, look, right now, you know, you've taken on somebody else's distress and pain. You've internalized it as if something is wrong with you. And you have an unsettled feeling in yourself. The addition of the words in your body is something that I've added recently to my own repertoire of thinking about it. And I can be aware and look at it from a kind of a third person perspective. And I can say, this feeling is not going to go away. This is the way that the body deals with, metabolizes, takes in information. This is how your nervous system responds to other nervous systems. It's quite beautiful, actually, because it speaks to how sensitive your nervous system is, which, of course, can cause wounding and pain and difficulty. But it's also the way that I am connected to other people that I meet, that I work with, that I love, that I care about. So I can be aware of the feeling of my body without being my feeling. I can be aware that I'm feeling anxious, but I am not anxious. Just a semantic difference, but I'm using it to illustrate the difference in approaches, the difference in thinking and experiencing. So mom and dad, husband and wife, partner, parent, whomever you are, whoever's listening, the work is to become conscious. And that's not going to take away all of your distress. It's not going to take away all of your trauma. It helps. It helps to anchor your work. But what it can provide you is agency in how you respond to the feelings that you're experiencing. That is the tool that I know about. In psychotherapy, as a therapist, my tool that I bring to bear in psychotherapy is me. When I do the Conscious Parenting Workshop, I talk a lot about The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. For those of you that might be new, I'll give you the 60-second elevator speech on Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was a mythologist who studied myth from all cultures, all time, throughout all history, and came to the conclusion that all of these stories were telling one story. He called it the hero's journey. And the journey was a journey back to ourselves, to our authentic selves. The hero experiences some distress, or in some cases, if they're very sensitive and listening very closely, they experience this call, and they go out looking for the thing. I use the example of King Arthur and his knights, where they were sent to look for the Grail. That was the quest. That's the thing that they went out looking for. And there's wonderful elements to heroic journeys that teach us about the journey of life. The knights, for example, thought it most noble to go into the forest to begin their journey where there was no path, illustrating the fact that we have to go into the unknown. To learn new things, we have to experience something other than what we've already experienced. And so the Conscious Parenting Workshop, part of what I'm trying to teach you, part of what I'm trying to introduce you to invite you into, is that you have to have an experience to cement the change. So the knights go out, they're looking for the Grail. Of course, they never found the Grail. And in many heroic journeys, the hero, the protagonist, does not find what they are seeking. For parents, for individuals and couples, for individuals that I work with, it might be to save a child who's struggling with substance use disorder. For an individual inside of a couple, it might be to find greater peace and harmony in the marriage. For any other individual, it could be any number of things. The knights didn't find the Grail, but what they experienced on the journey changed them. It's really difficult to talk about my evolution, because after 30 years of psychotherapy, after 30 years of studying parents and children and relationships, I want to bring back the wisdom that I have found, the unique wisdom that I have found on my unique journey. Not the same as everybody else's. I want to bring that back and share those with you. But the fact of the matter is that it doesn't come, this wisdom doesn't come via an explanation. It comes by experience. You learn something by going through it that you can't learn any other way. My therapist likes to tell the story that she was sitting at her son's graduation speech at Penn, University of Pennsylvania. And the commencement address, the president of the university stood up and said to the graduating students, "You know something today that you did not know 4 years ago. You know what it's like to have a college degree." And she wasn't talking about the specific education and facts that they had gleaned in those 4 years. She was talking about the fact that those are dramatically different people sitting before her than they were 4 years ago. So it goes back to this idea that parenting or coupleship, any relationship, any intimate relationship, that's the medicine that changes us. I made a joke some years ago where I said, getting married, having children is a horrible idea. I was saying it tongue in cheek. Don't do it if you can avoid it at all costs, because of how painful and difficult and impossible it is to navigate those relationships. Unfortunately, I said, I don't know many other ways that you're going to learn the lessons about yourself that those relationships will reveal for you, that they will expose in you. So the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's idea is this algorithm, this pattern. I remember learning about it many years ago, and it didn't hit me. I thought, who cares what Joseph Campbell, who cares what this guy Campbell says? Who cares if he came up with some idea that he saw in the myth. That doesn't relate to me. But what he's talking about, and it's very tied to Carl Jung's psychology, is that the myths that endure, the myths that attract hundreds and thousands and millions of people and generations upon generations, the stories that we retell, they stick, they land, they stay because they resonate with the unconscious, with what it means to be a human being. So he's not talking about stories. He's not talking about mythology or religion. He's talking about the human psyche. So the story of these myths reveals what is ultimately each person's desire, which is to come to know themselves. Like Rumi says, the desire to know your own soul will end all of the desires. You go out there looking for the grail. This is the most beautiful thing, I think. You go out there looking for the grail. What's a grail? A grail is a cup. The Holy Grail specifically was to have been the thing that Jesus drank out of, that held the blood of Christ. This holy, sacred symbol of Christ's love. But in mythological terms, the grail is something that holds what is poured into it. It is a container. You've heard the idea of holding space for other people, or everybody's heard, of course, of listening to somebody else, which is the equivalent of holding space for somebody, listening patiently and non-judgmentally. The grail that they went after to seek is them. You are the grail. You come back after sitting in psychotherapy for a few years. You come back after sitting in an Al-Anon meeting or a Codependence Anonymous meeting for 100 sessions. And what you come back with is a greater capacity to hold space for other people. You come back less judgmental, less certain of absolute truths and doctrines, more open, more curious. Because of this expansion of consciousness and awareness, you're able to regulate more. And so when somebody brings to you, somebody you care about or work with or encounter brings to you their distressing energy, you're able to take that in and metabolize it because of the greater awarenesses and resources you have for yourself. You, mom, dad, parent, you, spouse, husband, wife, partner, friend, you are the grail that you seek. I stumbled upon the quote by Henry Miller, the author, just a few weeks ago. I've been sharing it on these broadcasts ever since, but I think it's a wonderful illustration of this idea. He said, one's destination, and he's a storyteller, he's a writer. One's destination, he suggested, is never a place. It's a new perspective, a new way of looking at the world. Joseph Campbell said, heaven is not a place. It's a feeling that we have when we have transcended our circumstances, when we have expanded and grown through oftentimes incredibly difficult and painful experiences. Going through pain and surviving it in the presence of others who can comfort and offer you support. Going through pain in that way changes us. We become more compassionate for ourselves and for others. And then when we become compassionate for ourselves, everything begins to expand. One of the goals in a therapeutic setting for me as a therapist working with groups or individuals is to develop, to model, to show you greater compassion. And the reason that I want to show you compassion is not because it just feels good or because I feel it, although those things are true. But the technique of it is because then when you have compassion, when you develop self-love, and that's how one develops it. You want to know how to love yourself better? Spend time around a compassionate, patient, non-judgmental, curious, and regulated person. That's how human beings develop. So beyond all of the techniques, beyond all of the skills, beyond all of the education, beyond all of the insights even, is this development of self-compassion. Then, when you develop self-compassion and that begins to expand, you start to know yourself better. You start to become more conscious, right? And when you become more conscious, you have agency. You are not responding automatically, reflexively to circumstances, situations, to people. You're responding deliberately. You can separate out, you can observe again that the feeling in your body that causes the urge to fight or flight or flee or fawn. You feel that, you observe it, you know it. You're able to stay put. Another tool that I'm talking about lately in teaching is slow down. Just begin by slowing down. Years ago, in fact, this was modeled to me by somebody who did just the opposite. I had somebody on my team that was incredibly talented and bright and gifted at their job, but they had a lot of unresolved trauma. Very vivid, very obvious. And I watched how they responded to feedback, specifically around emails and texts to team members. And I watched that no matter what time of day they received an email, that if they felt triggered, they would respond immediately, any time of day or night. So I began to respond to emails slowly, to wait a day if I felt any kind of energy in my body. And by just waiting, my responses came from a more regulated place. I used to teach the skill of timeout to men who were convicted of domestic violence, who had to take a court-ordered anger management class that I was hired to teach. And we would teach timeout, the very first class and all the way through. Nobody wanted to do it. They never did the assignments. They thought it was ridiculous, beneath them, silly, irrelevant. But as I was teaching it, I started to realize if I took a timeout, which again, why don't people want to take a timeout? One of the main reasons that they don't want to take a timeout is because it takes some kind of vulnerability to take it. One has to admit to oneself that you need a timeout. And when you're feeling upregulated, you don't want to admit to any need ever. You want to be impenetrable, completely armored up. You don't want anything to be about you. But I found that when I started to take timeouts to wait, then my responses were incredibly improved by the process. And more recently, I've just learned I'm a fast talker. I'm a fast processor. It's my gift and my weakness as a speaker. I believe it comes from not being heard as a child. Also, I have a predisposition to be able to think and process neurologically fast. That's true of me also. And I've been learning lately, just slow down. If you're not watching this broadcast, you wouldn't know it, but I have 25 slides prepared for the evening or so. I haven't moved on from the first slide because I'm trying to practice the idea of slowing down. Just slow down. So many times after these broadcasts, I say to myself, oh, I wish I had made that point. But I was in a hurry. And when you're in a hurry, you're operating from that part of your nervous system. You're acting in such a way to replicate what a scared, dysregulated nervous system does. And just like slowing your breath can begin to get you regulated, slowing your talking, slowing your thinking, replacing anger or fear with curiosity when you can. But it takes time. Slow down. And I think you'll be amazed, like virtually everybody that does this, that you'll find yourself much more wise an hour or a half a day or a day later. It'll be hard to admit because, again, we don't want the problem to be in us, right? We want the problem to be in the other person and in their behavior. But the fact of the matter is, we are human beings. We are flawed, imperfect, fallible human beings. We can only touch that in ourselves when we've had a significant amount of experience with somebody else loving our horrible, rotten selves, loving us as we are. So that's why I talk more theoretically. And again, I apologize to anybody who might be watching this or listening to this if you're new to this work. It happened to me again. It's happened to me countless times. Somebody said to me at the workshop, when I first started listening to you, when I first read your book, I didn't understand it. Then I kept listening, I kept reading, and now I can see it everywhere. And I always wonder, what keeps them listening? What keeps them reading? There must be something. They must have some hint, some sense, some feeling. And maybe again, it's just our two nervous systems connecting. Maybe they get some sense that I'm presenting bigger ideas. And I want to take a moment and just clarify. These aren't my ideas. I'm not presenting the theory of Dr. Brad Reedy. I'm not. I am curating the ideas from the masters, from the analysts, from Freud, from Jung, from Melanie Klein, Marie-Louise von Franz, right? From Rumi, from Einstein, from Roger Waters, and the lead singer of Pink Floyd. I'll take the truth from wherever I can get it. It's not my idea. From Joseph Campbell. These are not. This is not new. This existed. These ideas existed long before this modern discussion and modern trend of trauma existed. This came from those who realized that if they listened patiently to a client tell their story, that somehow that healed them. Now we know, because of our science and our ability to take images of the nervous system of the brain, now we understand what's happening. Now we understand the neurological processes. That a certain kind of response, a certain kind of energy, a certain way of being affects the other person's nervous system dramatically, for better or for worse. So all of this is to say that consciousness is important. Tools are important. Skills are important. But at some point, the difference is hard to describe. If you've had the experience, you don't need an explanation. If you haven't had the experience, in some ways, the explanation will never do it justice. But really, what this all leads to for me is it leads to an invitation. I'm going to make a bold invitation to come to the intensives, to come to Finding You. And frankly, and I've said this plenty of times, if you don't want to come to ours, go to somebody else's. If again, you have skepticism and think, well, this is a product that he's selling that they want to make money from. It is true that I do want to make money for the time that I spend working. That is true. But that is not why I do this work. If it was about money, I would do something else. I want to bring back to people that are newer to the journey than I am whatever wisdom I have to offer from this long journey of psychotherapy. And I want to say something to you about the professionals and the teachers and the writers out there. They all struggle with everything. Gabor Mate, Bessel van der Kolk, Brene Brown, all of them. They struggle with everything that I teach, everything that they teach. Alice Miller, who wrote the most important book about children, in my opinion, her son wrote a scathing essay about her. Carl Jung's children, some of them were estranged at the time of his death. Freud had good relationships with his children, so I'm kind of partial to him. because I think he really lived and embodied it really, really well. But still, there were people who hated him, people who found him unbearable to live with. We all struggle. But there's some fear about sharing that as a professional because then people won't give us credibility. I don't presenting myself as having figured it out and having arrived should suggest to you that I have absolutely no credibility because nobody fully arrives. So I want you to know that every therapist that you've ever met, every educator in this field that you've ever worked with or heard struggles with everything that they're teaching, or they wouldn't have anything worthwhile to teach you. That's where they learned it. So it's an experience. I invite you into an experience. I think listening to these podcasts, you don't know it, but I can see the long list of people that attend live every session. And I see some names that I've seen for years. Some of them on the list are 10, 15 years old. I've seen them for 10 or 15 years. And I'm not teaching dramatically new things each week. Of course, I'm adding to my knowledge base all the time. But I think they come to be reminded. I think they come because they understand that contexts that we find ourselves in make a difference. They shape us. What happens on the outside becomes reflected on the inside structure of people. So I think they come because they want to reconnect to this sensibility, to this way of thinking, to this way of being. And if you get into therapy, I think that finding you intensives, again, it's the thing that I've worked on and concluded after 30 years of working in this field. This is my best offer. These podcasts, these workshops are my best offer to you. I wrote this a while ago, and this is maybe the simplest and most straightforward way that I can say what I believe. You were wounded, more than some and less than others, but you were hurt. And the way you protect that pain hurts others, most pointedly your children. Work on yourself and discover that your fear, your hurt, and your anger are yours. Take them back. That is, take responsibility for them so your children don't have to carry them. This is the greatest love that you can give, and it will multiply. Your children will bring even greater healing to their children. And in this very simple way, your love multiplies through eternity. What we do to protect ourselves from things that have already happened to us, which is the great paradox, the great irony. What we do to protect ourselves from the things that have hurt us is how we hurt others. In a very simple sense, and this is a model that I was taught and I developed my own version of it 30 years ago, is that we have experiences that are less than ideal. And when that happens, we have emotions that are unpleasant: anger, hurt, grief, fear, guilt, helplessness, and so on. And if we don't have a place to share those where we can be soothed by a regulated nervous system, by a parent, by a friend, by a mentor, by somebody bigger than us. Physically, when we were young, they were bigger than us. As we get older, they're bigger than us psychologically, metaphorically. We have to share that with somebody bigger than us. And if we can do that, and they can remain calm and curious, hopeful and supportive, not reactive, we start to develop a sense, a structure inside of us that we carry with us all the time. So yes, we learn to talk about our feelings using I feel statements. We learn to listen by practicing the reflective listening skills. But know this about your children. Human beings go through 3 stages of expressing feelings, essentially. The first one, the infant, the small child, is I am bad. See, the child who is young doesn't experience separation between themselves and the outside world. So when mom is upset, I am bad. When dad is exhausted or frustrated, I am bad. That's the first stage. But eventually, We get to the point where other people are bad, right? The badness is out there. That's the teenage stage. Simply put, grossly put, that's the teenage stage. It's everybody else's fault. And if we are heard, and if the big people around us have enough patience, if they show enough presence, if their nervous systems are regulated enough, we begin to move through that stage to the stage of we're all bad. We're all human. Right? You're bad, I'm bad, we're all bad. It's okay. But so many parents or therapists want to move people to that third stage so quickly. And if you try to move somebody from the stage of blame to the stage of accountability without the process, they will regress back to the first stage of they are bad. And that first stage is deadly, literally deadly. One does not live long, not well in that stage, because they will engage in self-harming, self-medicating, self-sabotaging, self-harming behaviors. So it's important to tolerate the you are bad time. That's the gift of the parent. We are bigger. Ideally, we're supposed to have, by this point, healed our wounds, our nervous system to a certain extent. So when the child calls us a monster, we're not threatened by it because we know ourselves. That's what consciousness does for you. It allows you to be present with other people and not see them through the filter, the lens of your own wounds. So when someone's mad at you, you don't think it's about you. You see their pain, their hurt, their fear, their sadness, their grief. But if you, because of your impatience, try to move them to that third and more integrated, more transcendent stage, there's a great risk that they will regress back to the first stage of I am bad. I worked with a young man some years ago. I was actually substituting for another therapist, and he, through his discussion, we spent some time talking about his anger toward his parents, me encouraging him to feel it, to think it, to say it. He'd come into the program fairly suicidal with an attempt in the last 6 months. So I spent a session with him talking about how the church that he grew up in and the parents that he had were all limited, that he had a right to be angry at them, at those institutions and those people. And he wrote a letter that reflected this new idea, these new thoughts and these new feelings. And the parents were very upset with me. I was only a fill-in, by the way. And they were very mad that after meeting with me, that their child wrote a very angry letter. He said something along the lines of, I don't want to kill myself anymore, but I don't know if I want a relationship with you. And I said to them, when they called me, I said, we got him out of that first stage. That's deadly. That's dangerous. In one session, he had a new sensation in his body that wasn't about hurting it, but he was saying he didn't know if he could tolerate you anymore. That's progress. But for parents, that can feel intolerable. For parents, that can feel like regression. For parents who haven't healed, for parents who are less conscious, for parents who are still trying to make sense out of a fractured ego, that blame, that anger can be very threatening. So you have to do your work. You have to do your work so that your ability to hear and see other people comes from a healed, whole, larger place, not from a wounded, scared, insecure place. And it's a lifelong journey. It is a lifelong journey. Good parenting is its own reward. Good parenting, being a good partner, is good living. It means being a better man, woman, person, friend, self, boss, employee. Healthy parenting is the end, not the means to an end. You know the phrase, virtue is its own reward? Healthy parenting is the end, not a means to the end. If we fail to embrace, no matter how painful or scary the journey of parenting a struggling child is, we'll also miss the treasure, the lesson, the wisdom that it has to offer. So to wish that this wasn't happening, to wish that you weren't on this detour, which is, by the way, both of those sentiments are understandable. We all have them. But the new idea is that if we don't embrace, if we don't radically accept what's in front of us, we miss the wisdom, the gold, the treasure that it has to offer, which is this expansion, this new awareness. For me, parenting struggling children offers many gifts, including, maybe most important, increased compassion for others who suffer, clarity in recognizing our boundaries, and improved self-care. Remember, parenting skills and techniques don't change children. Parenting skills and principles change parents. And that change, experienced by the parent, will and can have a wonderful impact on a child. I want to end with this quote. It's one I've shared lately by Marie-Louise von Franz, who was a patient of Carl Jung's, I believe, and became her own successful analyst and writer. She said, Carl Jung has said to be in a situation where there is no way out, or to be in a conflict where there is no solution, is the classical beginning of the process of individuation. That's the jumping off point of the hero's journey. That means that you go out looking for the widget, the thing that you think will solve the problem, the tool, the skill, the therapist. This point in time is meant to be a situation without a solution. The unconscious wants this hopeless conflict in order to put the ego up against the wall, so that the individual has to realize that whatever they do is wrong, whichever way they decide is wrong. This dilemma, this no-win situation, is meant to knock out the superiority of our ego, which always acts from the illusion that it's the one calling the shots and making the decisions. A marriage that's on the rocks, a child that struggles, is the invitation, the realization that you can't get it right, you can't control it. You will come to meetings, you will go to groups, you will read books in the hope that eventually you'll find the silver bullet. You'll find the magic potion. And what's beautiful is that if you stick with it long enough, if you keep going and surround yourself with people that are a little bit farther along, hopefully, than you are on the journey, you will change. And you will realize in that changed state, that different way of thinking, that different way of looking at children and relationships and love and fear and marriage, that you will change your ideas about all of that. And what will happen is you will become the magic potion. You will become the silver bullet. You will bring back, pardon the simpleness of this, a nervous system that is more regulated and capable of healing other people. The thing that heals people is other people who have regulated nervous systems. And those people have often been through a perilous, terrifying, painful process, but one in which they haven't given up. They kept going. They listened to others and eventually found that they were the home that they were seeking. They were the answer that they were seeking. It's not an arrogant conclusion. It's not a narcissistic point in time. It is remarkably humbling, because in it you are human, and you will fail and you will struggle and you will regress and you will still do the dumbest things in the world. But because of your increased awareness and compassion, You'll move through it more gracefully. So the take-home messages are keep going. If money is a challenge, go to Al-Anon, go to CODA. I don't care if you don't have a spouse or a child struggling with substance use disorder. Go anyway. Listen to people talk about what it's like to be in relationship with other people who are struggling. Listen to them confess and describe how their addiction, their issue of trying to control other people is the thing that needs attention, is the project worthy of its focus. Understand that the new project is you. The new project is you. And on this journey, therapy will change. It will change you, and eventually you'll go to therapy for a different reason. It's okay to start where you're at. Start with the I feel statement. Start with the journey of the heroic parent. It's a really good introduction to this work. And then keep going. Come to Finding You. Go to another intensive with somebody else who does this kind of experiential dive into oneself. Find guides, find helpers, find people who think differently than your background, who are saying different things than your parents and the big people that were around you when you grew up, who have a different reaction to mistakes, to imperfection, to stupid things that we all do. They respond to it with compassion, with humor, with love, with empathy. And ultimately, just keep going. I want to read what somebody wrote. I think it was meant and intended for the whole group, so I'm going to read it. Somebody writes in tonight, our family has done therapy for the last 10 years, individually and as a family. Most of us have, quote unquote, learned it is better to not react, but to respond. But then we learned that sometimes true feelings are stored, maybe even buried, and still present in the mind and the body. And often the person reacting isn't truly understood, i.e., how much the issues bother them. The person did not express themselves. The reaction does not let you know that either. The issue has really bothered the person, made them sad or frustrated, or let us know that there's a deeper issue. Something more is really bothering the person. So in our family, a short reaction blow up can give us information about what is going on, or that something else is really bothering the individual. This is sort of like, quote, what you can learn from a lie, unquote. Blow ups and lies are not good, but much can be learned from both. See, even your approach to this demonstrates your wisdom, your hard-earned wisdom. That's what happens in psychotherapy all the time. Is people try things that I would never recommend. People fight, people yell, people scream, people lecture, all things that I might coach against if I were focusing on skills. But because I'm focusing on the journey and the transformation that is possible, like you are, I respond to them with curiosity instead of judgment. I respond to somebody's blow up with curiosity instead of anger or shame or guilt or judgment. And when I respond to them that way, they learn to respond to them that way. And we all learn something that we couldn't have learned any other way. That's why it's so important to value the mistakes. It's a beautiful, beautiful share. Thank you so much. All right, folks. May 16th is the next online Finding You. June 4th through 8th is the one that I'll be running. June 23rd through 27th is going to be run by my wonderful and gifted daughter, Emma Reedy June. Jordan is her husband. I believe he'll be with her on that intensive also. I'll be doing the Conscious Parenting Workshop this Monday, 9 to 4. And the Finding Connection Workshop for couples will be hosted and facilitated by me and my wife, Michelle, June 18th through 22nd. If you want to coach, if you want a private intensive, or any other inquiries, suggestions, questions, if you want to sign up for our new Inner Circle podcast, which will give you access to the live broadcast and also to a couple of episodes a month that will not be broadcast to the public, info@findingyouprograms.com is the email to use, info@findingyouprograms.com. If you want to come to my workshop in the fall, October 12th in upstate New York, go to the website eomega.org. That is eomega.org. Look for the workshop, The Audacity to Be You, run by Brad Reedy, and sign up there. My next broadcast will be a week from tonight. What if I am the only one in my family doing work? A very common question. What if I am the only one in my family doing the work? What do I do then? That'll be next Tuesday, May 20th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I look forward to that. All right, folks, thanks for joining me. I hope this was a helpful point of contact. I hope that something I said made sense to you. And as always, for showing up, for on behalf of the people that you love and the people that love you, thank you for showing up to these things. The change in you makes all the difference in the world. Have a great evening. And I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.